Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We will be getting started in a few minutes, waiting for a few more of our committee members to join. And Chanel, can I let you know when you should be going live? I'm assuming you're going to press the live button at some point. Can I let you know when? I take that as a yes.
Yes, sorry.
All right, cool.
Oh, Curtis.
Yes.
It looks like NYPD traffic is not a panelist.
Say their name and Chanel can move them over.
Oh, there they go.
Okay.
Thank you, Chanel.
I'm just going to do a quick name check. So NYPD Transit Division, could you please state your name?
Yes, hello. It is Officer Novikov and Sergeant Shevitz. Still trying to, figure out the technical difficulties here. But you can hear me though, right?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining. Let's see here. And we have names for everyone else. Could we move over Sally Fisher? She's a board member. Could we move over Liz Ritter, board member? Steve Miller, who's from Department of Corrections, also over. And once we have that, we're going to dive right in. Just want to make sure we have our precincts present first, though. So I see Shevitz and Novikov from Transit Division 3. Do we have someone? We have two callers. We have someone from the 3-3 represented today.
Hi, Curtis. It's Captain Chung, 3-3.
And do we have someone from the 3-4 represented today?
Lieutenant Semioli from the 3-4.
Semioli. All right. All right. So I think we can go ahead and get started. Chanel, you want to go ahead and press the button?
All right.
Alrighty, thank you all for joining our December Public Safety Committee meeting today. It is a beautiful, crispy winter day in New York. So hopefully, if you're watching live, hopefully you're entertained by our robust conversation we're going to have this evening. So we're going to start off by introducing our committee members. First of all, my name is Curtis Young. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee committee, and I'll pass it to my assistant chair.
Hi, I'm Danielle Jetu, Assistant Chair.
Hi, I'm Gabriela Estrella, part of the committee.
Graham Serrallo, I'm public member.
Are there other committee board members? Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Liz Ritter. I'm chair of the Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee.
So there are a few others.
Hi, I'm Sally Fisher. I'm board member on Parks and Cultural Affairs and Health and Environment.
Thank you for joining. And last but not least, our rabbi.
Hi, Yosef Kalinsky, member of the committee.
Great. Thank you all for joining. As we move through our agenda, we usually start off with updates from the precincts. So we're going to turn it over to the 3-3. Captain Chong, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is Captain Chung, 3-3XO. For the 28-day period, where crime we're doing okay. With robberies, we're down 40%, 9 versus 15 from last year. Burgs, we're even 13 versus 13, and GLAs were up 700%, 8 versus 1 from last year. So the robberies, 3 of them were from personal electronic devices, cell phones mainly. It was 2 robberies, strong arm, 2 carjackings. 2 of the robberies, we do have identified perps. They're actually CV and the defendants are known to each other. So there is an active warrant for these 2 working. The detective squads and the NCOs are working on those cases. One of them was on a train. 3 perpetrators went up to a complainant and took its cell phone. Happened on the train station, but it counts as a 3-3 precinct crime. Burglaries were even, 13 versus 13. There is wanted flyers for the Burke. There is a Burke Patterns commercials. 3 of them are commercial spaces. Perpetrators are breaking into one store, breaking down adjoining walls between 2 commercial spaces and going through the other locations. Happened in 2 instances. We did have 1 arrest. So actually 3 commercials, 3 residentials, and 3 truck burglaries. We do have truck burglaries are described as, so let's say a delivery guy is Uber Eats driver, drives his own car, is making a delivery, breaks into the car, steals a bag of food. That's considered truck burglary. So we have 3 of those in this 28-day period. We did have 1 positive arrest. Unfortunately, this defendant is out waiting a court date right now because of the whole system, but we're not going to get into that. GLAs we're getting destroyed right now, this 28-day period, 8 versus 1, an increase for 700%. So for half of those cases, about 4 of them, 50% of them are vehicles left running. As I said last time, people are leaving their keys in the vehicles, making a delivery, getting a cup of coffees from a delivery from a deli or bodega, coming back out, cars are being stolen. So one instance, vehicle running, key left in the car. Another instance, engine running, defendant comes back, CV comes back, discovered car is missing, still in possession of the key. Like I said the last time, even though the car is running and you have the key fob, it doesn't, if the person drives away with the car is capable of driving without the key fob. The key fob is only to turn the car on and off. It doesn't prevent someone from driving it away. Third instance, key left in ignition, engine running. Another one, keys left in ignition. So this is, people really have to take kind of a proactive approach and just turning off the car and not leaving keys in the car. In the 56-day period, we did have 18 GLAs. Of those, 9 of the cars were recovered. So we need your part in helping us spread the word, not leaving cars running when you're, even if you think it's 2 seconds. A lot of these cases, it's less than 2 minutes and they come back out and the car is gone. So that's about it. Burglaries, we're doing really well with package stuff. We only had 1 for the 28-day period. We do recommend, as we said, if especially now with the Christmas, for holiday seasons coming, a lot of people are going to make deliveries and this whole COVID pandemic's going on. Packages are going to be increased with deliveries and stuff. If you can, have a neighbor look out for it, send it to a neighbor's house, a friend's house, or even at your work, but don't leave it in the lobby because a lot of them, again, for the 28-day period, we have only had 1. So the word is getting out, don't leave packages unattended in the lobby. And so that's preventing a lot of package theft. And that's about it. I don't have anything else. I'll move it on to the 3-4.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. First of all, are you all able to see my screen?
I'm not on Zoom. I don't have a camera on. We're having technical difficulties, so I'm on the landline.
Okay, perfect. We're going to go to the 3-4 now. Danielle, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I can
3-4.
see.
Lieutenant Simili, you're up. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, can you?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So for the 28-day period in the 34th precinct, we are down 100% in murders. Last year, during the same 28-day period, we had 1 murder, and this year we have 0, thankfully. Rapes, we broke even, 0%. 1 this year, 1 last year in the same 28-day period. Robberies, unfortunately, again, 20 robberies during this 28-day period in comparison with last year, 20. Felonious assaults, this year we're down 45%, 13 versus 24. Burglaries were up 33%, 16 versus 12 of last year. Grand larcenies were down 30 versus 49 of last year, a 38% drop. And grand larcenies, grand larceny auto, 18 versus 7 last year, 157% increase. Going over what, just to piggyback off what Captain Chung said from the 3-3, we're having the same problem with people leaving their key fobs in their pocket, leaving their cars running, and leaving their vehicles unlocked, thinking that their cars can't be driven off, but unfortunately they can. And we're trying to make sure our officers are out there to make sure that if people do leave their cars unattended, that they are issued a summons for leaving the car unattended and running, because this adds to the grand larceny auto problem that we're having. And even individuals who do have their car stolen are still issued a summons for that. We have to take preventative measures, so we have cops going out there writing double parking summonses, because a lot of the people that leave their car running with the key fob in their pocket and the vehicle unlocked just go into a store for a minute, 30 seconds. They're going to be in and out. Then when they come out, their car is taken. We had one incident where an individual dropped his key fob unknowingly. The car was locked and not running, but somebody else did see him drop the key fob, and they took his car anyway. We did recover 1 vehicle. We were able to track it to the 52nd precinct, and we recovered it, but no arrest was made at that time. Do you want me to go to traffic regarding collisions?
Well, yes, you can, and we have someone from the traffic division as well on the line that can give us an update as well. But yes, please continue. And just for the record, Cheryl Miller, I see that you have your hand up for a question for the 3-3. After the presentation, we'll get to questions. We'll tackle them all at once. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the traffic stat report for the 34th precinct. For the 28-day period, we're down 42% in overall vehicle collisions. Now, vehicle injury collisions, are up 84%, 24 versus 13 of last year. Injuries in total up 81%, 29 versus 16. And occupant injuries, 19 versus 13. So in all these categories, injury collisions, injuries, and occupants, injuries to occupants of the vehicle, we're up over 80% for 2 and 46% for the occupant injuries. Mm-hmm. Now, the pedestrian injuries were 5 this year versus 2 last year, a change of 3, up 150%. And bicycle collisions are up 5 versus 1, a change of 4, which leads to a 400% increase. For arrests, for DWI, for the 28-day period, we have 1 DWI arrest versus 2 we had last year. And for VTL 511, that's suspended license, we had 8 arrests this year versus 19 of last year. You want me to get into the enforcement aspect?
Yes, please.
All right. So for double parking summonses, the 34th precinct has had in the 28-day period has had a 203% increase from 233 last year to 708 for this 28-day period.
Wait, could you repeat that again? 780 this year compared to how many
this year?
last
708 versus 233 last year for that same 28-day period, which goes And then for bus stops, we're down by 7 overall bus stop summonses. The 34th precinct cops have wrote 24 for this 28-day period versus 31. Crosswalk, where we broke even with 5 this year versus 5 last year. And bike lane summonses are up 285%, 81 this year versus 21 last year. Our overall total parking summons issuance is 1,206 for this 28-day period this year versus 578 of last year, 108% increase.
Okay, thank you very much for the update. Like I said before, we're going to take questions after all of the representatives share their updates. So we're going to move on to Transit Division 3 now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, again.
Yes,
Thank you very
hello.
much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Officer Novikov. I just took over for Officer Batts, who's now Sergeant Batts. So this is my first time doing one of these. So I apologize if I'm not as sharp as he was. Overall, because of the coronavirus pandemic, our ridership was down and has been down as a result. With less population on the trains, all our crimes are down across the board. The biggest thing that we've been focusing on, and I have it over here, is with normal ridership being down, our homeless complaints, unfortunately, are up. Our 2 biggest stations, one in the 3-4, one in the 3-3, 168 in the 3-3, 181. In the 3-4, we have a lot of homeless complaints, narcotics usage. So we've been dispatching cops as much as we can to do extra station inspections. And we've partnered up with BRC, which is the shelter downtown, to try to get them into shelters, especially now that the temperatures are dropping. Like I said, crime is down, thank God. My counterparts outside of the subway, have more things going on than we do. So our biggest thing right now is, like I said, the homeless issue, the narcotics usage at those 2 stations, and our panhandler complaints are down, which is good. And we've taken a proactive measure towards reminding people about social distancing, wearing the masks. We have operations to give out masks. Now every booth has a mask to give out if a rider doesn't have it. But we have not been summoning people as of yet. And that's mainly due in part to just people being compliant overall. We still get a few complaints, but we tend to err on the side of just warning people. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Alrighty, so thank you very much. We also have on the line Director Miller from Department of Corrections. Could you share any updates you have for the committee?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Superintendent Miller here from Edgecombe. As you know, Edgecombe is located on 160, between 163rd and 164th at 611 Edgecombe Avenue. We presently are a combination of a women's work release facility and a male general confinement facility. As it relates to COVID, we've had no instances of COVID with any of the population since the pandemic has occurred. We recently participated in having all the participants, all of the inmates in the facility tested, and everyone came out negative. We don't have any staff presently that's positive. We have 3 that are out on precautionary quarantine because of travel or because a family member tested positive, but they've tested negative and are just waiting the resident parent to return to work. I mentioned before that we have a fence project going on around the facility. And as I mentioned, we do have women that participate in work release. Work release is really one of the better reentry type of programs available to inmates because it gives an opportunity to develop some type of work history, make a contact with an employer prior to release, solidify an address so there's stability upon release. So that's even something that I would put out to the community board, that if there are employers that have employment opportunities, certainly our work release women would like to avail themselves that opportunity to get employment in the community. Everything else has been okay. We're waiting from the governor to announce any prison closures that are going to happen across New York State. That may happen. That announcement may come out later this month. Presently, because of the pandemic, Everyone's been required to keep as much social distance for the inmate population. And the way to do that is to have like bottom bunks only, so you don't have people sleeping in close proximity to each other. So that's one of the reasons that slow down any closures, to give as much room to distribute inmates across the state. Right now, New York is at a 30-year low in prison population. It's down to about 35,000 statewide. Since the beginning of 2020, over 8,000 inmates have been released, whether it was for COVID concerns or just regular time of parole. So also the alternative to incarceration that are being used. So that's my basic update.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are now at a point where I think we can take a few questions. So we have one question first from one of our board members, Sally Fisher.
Great. I have three quick questions. One is with regard to the injuries in the 34th precinct. I think that's not a surprise to those of us who live here, given the drag racing, et cetera. And I'm wondering what specific actions are being taken to address the speeding, which obviously is, people are terrified walking on the streets that they're going to be hit by cars. I have a number of friends that have almost been hit by cars, and I just wonder what we can do specifically to address that. My second question is for both of the precincts. The 34th precinct had their community council meeting on the same night as our board meeting, and I wonder how we can avoid that happening in the future. And finally, with regard to transit, I know you said crimes are down, but if you control for ridership, how does the crime picture look, like number of crimes per 100,000 trips or however one might do it? We've cut ridership in half. Is the crime rate in half, or are we actually experiencing an increase in the number of crimes given the decrease in ridership?
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense.
And your question is directed at the 3-4, correct?
3-4 for the first two, and transit for the last one.
Lieutenant Semioli from the 3-4. So I'm going over the year-to-date statistics, and the year-to-date statistics regarding the pedestrian injuries show us that a 31% decrease for the year. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, we took 3 additional this 28-day period, which took us from 2 last year to 5 this year. So that 150% sounds like a very big increase. I know it's definitely alarming, but it's 3 total incidents, larger than it was last year. And overall, for the year, we're actually down in almost all categories except for bicycles.
Yeah, I guess my question is, like, we know which cars they are. In some cases, people know which license plates they are. And so what can we do to help you get some of these dangerous cars off the street?
Well, regarding the vehicles, if you were to, for example, come to the precinct and say license plate number ABC 1234 has been speeding around the precinct, we'd have to see it ourselves. The state vehicle traffic law says that we, as police officers, have to observe the violation to issue the summons. So if he does not get caught by a speed camera or not observed by an officer, a summons can't be issued.
Okay.
And then with respect to the precinct community council meetings, how can those be scheduled so they don't collide with our general meeting?
I believe those are determined by by one police plaza, not directly by the precincts themselves. Am I correct?
I would have to ask Deputy Inspector Andrea about that. That I'm not sure. I can't comment on that.
My understanding, Curtis, is there was a conversation between 1PP and the precinct council. So in fact, there is some room for moving those to dates where they could actually work for the community.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That's never happened before. Usually they've never been scheduled on the day of our general body meeting. So that was the first time, at least since I've been public safety chair, that's happened. So we most certainly want to make sure that doesn't happen again, because we want to be able to attend both meetings, particularly myself. I would like to attend those meetings as I've done in the past. So we're going to move forward now. I just FYI, for those who are attending, I see your hand, Liz. For those who are attending attendees, I have moved a few of you over. If your hand was raised, meaning that you have a question or a comment, I've moved you over to panelists, and I'll acknowledge you when we're ready for your question to be posed. So thank you very much, Director Miller. I also
I've had my hand up for half an hour. Why am I not getting called on?
you're not getting acknowledged because we haven't gotten to that point in our agenda just yet. Thank you. So I have to acknowledge my board members first, and then I acknowledge those who are attending from the public. So next up, we have Liz Ritter.
Thank you, Curtis. This is a question for the 34th precinct. We have a serious issue in the northern parts of Inwood of loud parties that are happening, actually not in the 34th precinct, it's in the 52nd precinct in a parking lot behind the Target, just over the Broadway Bridge. I understand that this is not the 34th precinct's problem, but it is a noise condition that affects the people who live in the 34th precinct, and we don't have relationships with the 52nd in the same way that we do with the 3-4. So I'm wondering if you can guide us in any way on how best to reach out to the 5-2, or if it's at all possible for someone in the 3-4 to reach out to the 5-2 so that we can figure out how to get a handle on this problem. It's epic and really loud.
It's Lieutenant Samuel again from the 3-4. The best way would still be to go through 311 and to indicate the precinct of occurrence being the 52nd precinct. That would be the quickest way. I'll still touch base with the community affairs officer here to make sure that the complaint is sent to the 52nd precinct. That way it's something they are aware of in the future.
We've tried 311 and so far that hasn't really borne fruit. So if there's any way you could possibly reach out to your colleagues in the 5-2 on behalf of your residents in the 3-4, that would be much appreciated.
Okay.
Not a problem. We'll take care of that.
Just FYI, I just want to repeat myself. We allow our committee members as well as our board members to pose questions first, and followed by the public. So I'm not deliberately ignoring anyone. So my apologies, Cheryl. I see your hand is up. I also see your hand, Bernard. I'm going to move you over to panelists, but I just want to clarify that is our long-standing tradition here, and you've attended our meetings before, so this is pretty much understood first. So I am going to pose a question to Director Miller about the Edgecombe facility. You mentioned that you had concerns about the governor possibly closing prisons. How do you think any prison closures due to, for whatever reason, would impact your work?
Oh, well, I mean, New York City is literally only down to 2 state facilities now, Edgecombe and Queensboro. So it just limits the population. For example, the women that are in the work release program, they tried to do work release from the Taconic Correctional Facility, which is located in Bedford, New York. And they found that it was too far for them to be able to travel to New York for employment and to get back to the facility, in the same day, and really compromises the effectiveness of work release. So we feel that we're critical to stay open to give the women that aspect. And remember, in New York State, there's only 3 other female facilities. So it's very limited, and it's just not fair not to give them the same opportunities that the men have. The men have work release at Queensboro. So, it's critical for us in that regard. And the same way for the men that are coming with 90 days, they're New York City residents. So by them being at Edgecombe, it's easier for people to visit. It's easier for them to get resources in the New York City area and just make a better opportunity for them to transition back to the community. So considering a lot of people that are in state prison are from the New York City area, we would like to have opportunities for them to re-enter smoothly, which is it in the New York City area.
Okay, thank you very much for that. As you
Yeah, hello, you froze. Hello?
Our public with questions. And first up, we have Cheryl Miller, followed by Bernard Grotman.
Good evening.
Good
I
evening.
wasn't aware that, I wasn't aware that the format has now changed. Because previously, after the 33rd would speak, anybody that had questions for the 33rd was allowed to speak. Now I hope Captain Chung is still on here because I want to address him. So I don't know if he's still on here.
I am.
Okay, good evening. Okay, so the last time you were not on the last public safety, it was, I believe, Captain Bello, but there was a previous public safety meeting that you attended. I brought up about the dirt bike. So I just want to say, I understand that the police cannot chase these bikers.
Yes.
But
correct.
surely, Captain Chung, if the police really wanted to get these people, there has to be other ways that you can get them and confiscate their bikes and summons them. If you all know where these bikes are coming in from, that they're coming over the bridge into Inwood, and then making their way down to Washington Heights, back up to Inwood all day, all night long. You know where they're coming in from. Why can you not coordinate with the other precincts that are where the bikers are coming in from? For instance, if they're coming in from Riverdale.
There's a two-part answer to your question. So the first part is, dirt bikes are hard to chase and kind of pursue, as we call it. So we don't do that because it's dangerous, and it's they could actually outmaneuver the RMPs and the SUVs that we have much quicker. They go on the sidewalk, they go against traffic, they weave in and out. It's much quicker for them. So during the summer, we do initiatives. We do bike initiatives with the whole Manhattan North, because myself personally have done a few of them this past summer. What we do is we have cops from every command. They're under one commander, and then we set up checkpoints. And so when I did it, and when most of my colleagues did it, we did it on checkpoints on the Madison Avenue Bridge, 3rd Avenue Bridge, and kind of these thoroughfares that are coming into Upper Manhattan, coming from, I'd say, Brooklyn or the Bronx. So Manhattan North covers 59th Street and up. So anything below us, if they're coming in from Brooklyn, it's hard for us to control. But we do prevent them from coming in from the Bronx. We don't know specifically where they're coming from because we don't have the capability to follow them and see where they park the cars overnight. But we do set up checkpoints. What we do is we let them come in, and then we block them into the bridges, and it's been successful during the summer. So we do have initiatives like that. As far as doing it every week or every day, it's unreasonable and it's not feasible. So your answer is we do that during the summer when we know it's a big group coming in, especially in the summer. It's more prevalent in the summertime when they're just driving around, trying to cruise around. It's a little less now. Even myself, I notice, even me driving around, I don't see as many. So it is more of a summer initiative that we do. So that's part of the answer.
Well, I just want to tell you, and I'm not going to take up a lot of time. But
and this is the one by the hospital you're talking about, correct?
Yes, Captain Chung.
Yes, I remember,
like it was about, and it sounded like maybe about 50 to 100 of them a couple of nights ago. So I understand what you're saying. And yes, it has lessened since the summer. It's not to say that it's totally over.
Absolutely. I agree. I totally agree. It's not 100% gone. I don't think there would be that many. They might sound louder than, one or two, but if there's a big bunch, we do get intel and then we would get notified. And I haven't received any notifications or intel concerning that large amount. If it's 50 or 100, I don't believe it's that many. I do believe there are out there, but I don't think it's 50 or 100 like you're saying.
Well, it sounded like it because they
I agree. I don't doubt it at all.
Well, I have one more quick question. I'm sorry. I have one more quick question.
Okay.
One more quick question. What is being done about cars that are like double parked over here by the hospital and just sitting and blasting music? And I mean blasting it. Whose responsibility is that? Is that the NCOs? Is that the precinct, or is that traffic? Who is responsible?
Well, I would say all three, but the NCOs don't work 24 hours a day. They're only working. So the best course of action would be calling either the precinct TS or calling 311.
What
When
did
it
you say?
happens.
PF or TF? I didn't hear.
Just call the precinct direct, and then we would send a car out.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
So
you.
we are going to move you over to the participant side, Cheryl, and I'm going to move on with another question we have. So Claudia has a question, and then also we have a question that is a repeat question. Leela, are you on? Could you pose your question, please? I believe that's the same question as Victor.
Hi, I'm here. I just wanted to ask about the NYPD regarding the noise complaints on 9th Avenue and all those little streets. So the problem with that streets are like they are really small dead ends, and people tend to gather over there. Like this past weekend, we were actively submitting tickets, and all of them were closed. And when we went there to check what was going on because the music was too loud, there was like more than 100 cars, more than 100 people on the street. And I don't know if you remember what happened over the summer, that the whole avenue got blocked, even 207th Street, and we were ignored, all our tickets were ignored. So we're trying to prevent that from happening. And when we call to the prison, no one is ever picking up the phone because all the tickets get closed like 10 minutes saying like there was nothing. And I mean, like we have to actively record them, go to the prison, show them what's going on. We have been receiving a couple of officers saying like, are you sure this was today? Are you sure they were there? Like we had to actively show them the videos. And also we were chasing it, like not chasing, but following, like, you know, from distance. And we saw them going to the Target that I don't know who mentioned before. So it seems like when they get kicked out from 9th Avenue, they go to the Target in the Bronx. And I just wanted to ask, first of all, why no one is answering our 311 tickets, why they don't answer the phone on the 34th precinct, why do we have to go there and show them videos? And also, why don't you coordinate with the other precincts? Because this is not an issue only from one street. It's like a huge deal. Like we are not able to sleep. I remember over the summer, there was like 24 hours over the weekend, music nonstop, and still no one was listening to us. And we have like a couple of news people that came by, and that's when the 34th precinct was setting up all the checkpoints and patrolling the area. But as soon as the 34th precinct left, they're coming back, you know, because that's normal. If you don't pay attention, they come back. That's what they do. So I'm sorry for taking too much time, but that was my question.
Thank you very much. Those are all valid concerns, and we hear you. We've heard these complaints many times now over the past 8 months in particular. Is there a response? This is a question that Victor Sardana has also posed in the chat box, and others we've heard before. So what is happening now? What is the best way of resolving these issues in real time? Should they contact the precinct directly? What's going on with 311 complaints? Is there any update on why they're being closed out so quickly?
Lieutenant Semioli from 3-4. Do we have a specific date, time?
Yes, I do have and I think that was on Sunday. I'm sorry, Sunday. This past Sunday, I was able to record them, and I went to the.
Well, I'm trying to look up the radio call, so if you can tell me the time.
The time was around 11 p.m. 10:30, 11 p.m. We have been submitting tickets since 8 p.m. All of them closed. 11 p.m. 10:30, 11 p.m. I think it was. We went there to record it, and we called the precinct who won't pick up, and we went to the precinct to talk to, I think, Officer Ramirez, I think it was. Perez Ortiz. We talked to Officer Perez Ortiz.
Okay. And what did Officer Perez Ortiz say?
He was really nice and he told like he understand. But my question is, why do I have to go? Why don't they pick up the phone? Why don't they, like when we submit the tickets, I understand that sometimes, you know, one ticket gets closed, but we have been actively submitting several tickets and all of them get closed. And we also talked one day to Officer Quiñones that he responded really bad, saying that if I mean, he was saying like, are you sure that they are there? Like I told him like, this is the video, and he asked for the date of the video because he didn't believe us. And that was
Okay, I'm not denying that people are probably there, because pre-COVID, and I'm sure even when COVID is over, there's going to be people there. I'm looking at a 911 phone call for 202 Street, 9th Avenue, that came over at 22 or 10:16 p.m. on Sunday. The officers got there within 20 minutes. They requested a few extra units to the location for crowd control, and then the parties dispersed.
yes, but
Okay,
again,
so,
we
so
were
I'm going
submitting
to, can I chime in here? I'm sorry to move this along. So what is the best advice for this constituent of ours to move this forward? Should you have a direct conversation offline?
I honestly suggest the best way is, see what happens is, she was saying that 311, they get closed out right away.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. 311 is good. If we have a 911 job regarding a disorderly group, we're going to close out the 311 because we already have the 911 job.
But the
So
issue,
it's not like nobody's showing up. It's just that the 911 job takes precedence. So it's a duplicate of the same job. So as soon as they were able to get there, they got there and they did disperse the crowd. Now, regarding the calling of the precinct and nobody's answering the phone, that I'm going to have to look into. I'll have to look at the call logs.
Mm-hmm. I think what she's trying to say is, I mean, I'm not to speak for her, but it seems like the issues are not being resolved and they're being, put to the side. I'm not sure how many 911 calls you have in a minute, but it seems like this is a reoccurring theme we're hearing. For several months, we had the same concerns over and over again. So I myself, I'm starting to wonder. But we're going to move forward with our agenda. We have to move forward with our agenda. I would take a few more questions, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to go back to our committee members first. We have Graham, followed by Mariella.
I know we have to move forward with the agenda, so I'll pass.
Okay. Is it a similar concern?
It's a bigger question, but
okay, got it. Mariella.
Yeah, I just thought that Layla brought up an interesting point, which is, I think the desperation that some people are feeling is driving them to feel like they need to go and investigate on their own, or they need to record a video to then bring it. And I think that we're getting into dangerous territory when people feel that they are following the channels that exist and the structures that are in place, and it's not working. I think after 8 months of it, I think what Layla's describing is not unheard of. Like, I also know people who at 3 a.m. will say, you know what, I'm already up. I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna try to locate this noise. I'm gonna try to see what it is. And I think, and I see Liz, and I think that is also like a very dangerous, but when people don't have sleep and it's 3 a.m, people are going to do things that maybe are not the safest. So just to echo her concerns, I think it's getting serious, more serious.
All right, and our final question is from Claudia, from the public.
I think a lot of what I had to ask was already asked. I just wanted to follow up then quickly on something that Sally asked about what to do about the speeding cars, what the plan is, because I echo what Mariella said, the level of desperation here of this has gone on since April is really high. And so I just wanted to ask what the plan is, because we heard what the plan isn't. It's not to chase them, but I'm just wondering what the plan is.
And I'm sure you don't have an answer for that right now, or do you? Is there an enforcement plan, or are there conversations being had about figuring out ways to determine how to solve the issue?
By the way, that was my question too. Is and what's the plan for the summer? If this is the quiet time, right? This is winter. Is anything being discussed to prevent something next summer?
Hi, this is Captain Chung. So we do have our enforcement unit that does go out and write hazardous summonses, moving violations, speeding, disobeying signs, cell phone, texting. So we are. I'm looking at the activity, and we do have summonses for speeding, red lights, improper turns, right of way to pedestrians. I mean, that's our proactive way of kind of curbing some of this issue. Obviously, it might get, I can't predict it, but I can imagine if we didn't do that, it might have been worse. So we're trying our best in trying to curb this by writing these kind of hazardous violations.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question quickly?
Yes, you may. This will be our final question, Bernard.
Yeah, this is actually for Captain Chung. I had this, right now, 161st Street is it's like the suburbs. It's great. But I do see still guys out on the street around the neighborhood with speakers out and blasting music. I mean, I don't get involved with that because it's not, I'm not hearing it. It's not audible to me in my apartment or anything. But I'm worried about it continuing next year with these huge parties that were on my block here. And they weren't getting dispersed. I guess they got dispersed once, but other than that, they were allowed to continue on into the night, as long as in air quotes, they turned down, which they would turn down and then turn it back up again. And I'm just wondering if anything different is going to be done next year for next summer.
Hi, Mr. Bernard. I think we've kind of addressed that situation with you. We've worked very closely with you one-on-one. We've tried our best, and it did work. So we're going to continue. Just reach out to us, reach out to Officer Roman. If you have any problems, the NCOs, like I said, we've been, since we spoke over the summer, we've done more directed patrols on that corner, and I think it seemed to work, as you've said. So hopefully we can continue that, and hopefully the summer it'll work again.
Thank you very much. I think I have noticed a huge difference there in that location as well. And I think the key to it all is to continue to build strong relationships with the NCO officers and to have that direct way of contacting and sharing concerns in real time. I think that's worked really well. Block by
Yes,
block.
Curtis. Yeah, I believe, like I said, you guys are our eyes and ears, so we can't be everywhere. Again, once that corner got out of control, Mr. Bernard would give us a call and we would send a car out. It seemed to have worked, combating that corner specifically. So I think we just need to kind of multiply this plan of action, and hopefully it'll be a better summer this year.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes all of our questions. We had a lot of questions today. Just to add a few other things, we're going to move the agenda around just a tad bit. We were going to talk about the fire hydrant issue we discussed last month. We're going to move that to after the presentation. I'm also removing the item on the joint resolution pertaining to the fire mitigation plan. And we have several months for that because this is, once again, a conversation that needs to be had to help provide solutions for the firework issue for next summer. We're not there yet. It's only December, thank God. But we do want to start having those conversations and providing suggestions as a committee and as a board for what the FTY and what the enforcement agencies in general could do to mitigate the issue we had last summer. So Steve Simon is taking the lead on drafting the resolution. It will be a joint resolution because it's a combined, we're looking at it as a public safety as well as health and environment issue. So they are discussing it at the health committee, I believe tomorrow, and then you're going to send over a draft for us to discuss in January. So the only item we have remaining is our presentation, followed by a short discussion on what next steps for those two things. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my assistant chair, Danielle.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. Just to echo what Curtis has already said for your comments. This has been a great conversation. I think we have the most people joining right now than we've ever had before. So yeah, we're gonna sort of switch gears here. So just a sort of introduction, we have folks from the Cato Center for Equity, Health, and Justice talking about a campaign called Less is More. But just a mini introduction. So when we talk about public safety, this is the Public Safety Committee. When we talk about public safety, we're also talking about keeping people unjustly going to jail, and people who return from jail or prison and or who are on parole. And I'm not sure how many people know this, but we have historically had among higher incarceration rates in compared to other zip codes, other districts in the city. And with incarceration comes folks going to prison and then ultimately returning to our communities and being on parole. So these folks are part of our community, and we want to also be thinking about them and their public safety. One more comment I'll make is that we've talked a lot about funding for programs such as mental health, substance use, homelessness, education, and it's quite expensive to keep people incarcerated. And so another reason we wanted to have these wonderful folks join our conversation tonight is because as we divest from sending people unjustly to jail and keeping them incarcerated, we can begin to think about investing those dollars into our communities, which is something that we talked about when we passed the resolution on reallocating some of the NYPD funds and putting them into our communities. So that being said, we have the pleasure of having Melanie and Kenyatta, I hope I'm saying that right, and I think somebody else from the Cato Center for Equity, Health, Justice, and they're going to be talking about a campaign called Less is More, which discusses solutions to the problem of reincarceration for technical violations of parole. So without further ado, we'll turn it over.
Hey, thank you, Danielle, for that introduction. I just would like to ask you quickly, how much time do we have for this presentation, just to be mindful of the time?
Curtis?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
How much time do we have for this presentation? I just want to be mindful of the timing.
We have as much time as you need. We can be
Okay.
here for a few hours if you like, or a few minutes.
Sounds good. Thank you. So before we get
No,
started,
realistically, I would say we would like to get through the presentation portion within 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, then we can open up to questions afterwards.
okay, sounds good. So I'll just do a round of introduction with my team. So my name is Melanie Dominguez. I'm the New York City community organizer at Catal Center for Equity, Health, and Justice. And yeah, and I'll pass it along to my team.
Hi, I'm Kenyatta Thompson, the lead organizer with the Catal Center.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Curro. I'm a member with the Catal Center.
Perfect. So thank you all. So basically, just to give a brief overview about what Catal is about. So we are a community organization that focuses on basically ending mass criminalization, mass incarceration, and the war on drugs, along with advancing evidence-based solutions to promote health and safety while building the leadership and organizing capacity of our neighborhood residents, right? And so we are currently focused on our parole reform campaign, Less is More New York, and we have been engaged in this campaign for the last 2 years, right? And so this Less is More New York campaign is made out of a coalition that was basically started by a group of organizations that not only include Catal Center, but also include A Little Piece of Light and We Are Unchained. So I'll just pass it over to my colleague Kenyatta to talk a little bit more about the difference between parole and probation before we get started talking about the nitty-gritty of the bill.
Yes, thank you, Melanie. And I also wanted to say thank you to the members of Community Board 12 for allowing us here to speak. I think we've heard a bunch of information about what's been happening in, your local communities about, just the issues in the community. And we heard a little bit about what's happening from docs. And so something, especially in terms of closures of facilities, something that I really want to highlight is Less is More New York does come out of the work to close Rikers Island. you can't effectively close Rikers Island until you have bills that are passed, like Less is More New York, which will effectively shrink the prison population. And so we'll get into that a little bit later. And I know we have a short amount of time here. So what I'll do, like Melanie said, is just give an overview of probation and parole and the differences. But again, it was important for me to also share where this bill comes from, which is out of that work of decarceration and ensuring that our communities are actively cared for, and not, like you said, Danielle, we're just investing in the reincarceration of folks, but we're really investing in communities. So a lot of times people don't know the difference between probation or parole or different types of community supervision. So probation is a sentence that is imposed by a criminal or family court. And typically people are on probation and they can get released into the community without serving some time of incarceration. However, there are instances that they can get served times of incarceration, then they get let out on probation. And so the thing to really highlight is that this is a county issue. And so when we focus on New York, that's handled by the city of New York, and probation is run by the city government. Parole is very different. So parole is a portion of a correctional sentence that's served in the community following a term of incarceration in a state prison. And so that means a person ends up on parole either through the discretionary act of the parole board or because they reach the end of their determinate time. And so that is held by the state. And so we got a chance to hear from someone who's with DOCS, which is the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. And so DOCS is in charge of parole. And so they handle all cases, or the parole board handles cases of parole, but when we're talking about probation and parole, it's different. It's important just to know the difference between the two and how a person ends up on one or the other. And so I'll pass it back to Melanie to talk about an overview of the parole system in New York. And again, our Less is More New York bill focuses on people who are on community supervision, specifically parole.
So thank you, Kenyatta, for that. So just to give you a little, just to give you a scope of the issue, basically, there was a new federal report that basically said that New York is second in the nation for reincarcerating folks for a non-criminal technical parole violation. And then to make matters worse, New York actually leads the nation in reincarcerating folks for drug treatment. And basically, right now, if you take a look, there are about 5,000 people currently incarcerated across jails and prisons in New York for a non-criminal technical parole violation. That's a huge amount of people. And adding the pandemic to this, if the bill had passed, you know, those would have been 5,000 people less that would have been in jails and prisons and would have been exposed to COVID-19. And then on top of that, we have about 35,000 people on active parole. So we basically, with the bill, we want to make sure that we're not only accounting for the folks that are currently incarcerated, which I'll repeat are 5,000 people. We also want to be proactive and ensure that the 35,000 people on active parole aren't being funneled back into the system for these minor infractions on their parole. And we also like to make a note of the fact that we need to address the racial disparity, right? So right now in New York, Black people are incarcerated in New York City jails for technical parole violations at more than 12 times the rate of whites. That's a huge, huge number, and something that we really need to address. And so that just gives you a scope of the issue. And we'll pass it on to Melissa to talk a little bit more about what the bill does and the provisions.
Thank you, Melanie. My name is Melissa Coro, and I am a member with the Cattell Center. Before I share more about the provisions of the bill, I just want to mention that my son is currently incarcerated. We used to live in the Washington Heights community, and we still have family and friends that reside there. The passing of the Less is More New York bill is very important to us because there are a lot of families from the community that have loved ones in New York State prisons and jails. Many of them, like my son, when they get out, they will be on parole, and we need to ensure that they are protected. The Less is More Community Supervision Revocation Reform Act will fix this problem. It was developed by people on parole, people currently incarcerated, their family members, Cattell, Unchained, Justice Lab at Columbia, Legal Aid, and many others. The bill is sponsored by Senator Brian Benjamin and Assembly Member Walter Mosley. Now, here are the 4 provisions of the bill. The first one is restricting the use of incarceration for technical violations. Incarceration will be eliminated as a sanction for most technical violations. Certain technical violations could still result in jail time, but it will be capped at a maximum of 30 days. The second one, bolstering due process. Rather than being automatically detained in local jails, people accused of a technical violation of parole will be issued a written notice of violation with a date to appear in court and will remain at liberty for any hearings. People on parole accused of a new criminal offense will be afforded a recognize hearing in a local criminal court before they are detained, and the standards of the bail reform statute will apply. The third one is providing speedy hearings. Persons under community supervision shall be afforded a speedy adjudicatory hearing upon an alleged violation of the conditions of release. And the fourth one, providing earned time credits. People under community supervision will be eligible to earn a 30-day earned time credits reduction in the community supervision period for every 30-day period in which they do not violate a condition of supervision. In regards to where the bill stands in the legislature, in the Senate, the bill number is S1343C, and it is sponsored by Brian Benjamin, and we currently have 20 co-sponsors. It is sitting in the Crime Victims, Crime and Corrections Committee. In the Assembly, the bill number is A5493B, and it is sponsored by Walter Mosley, and we have 29 co-sponsors, and it is sitting in the Committee on Corrections. The bill has yet to be brought up to the floor for a vote in its current form. However, we are working towards getting a majority of co-sponsors in both the Senate and the Assembly. Kenyatta will share more on the steps to passing the bill.
Thank you. So as Melissa just stated, Less is More New York has 4 main provisions, and we're currently in the process of getting more co-sponsors in both the Senate and the Assembly to ensure that it passes. And so we are at the cusp of the next legislative session, which will start January 6th in 2021. And so when that time happens, the bill will be reset, as bills often do. So we'll get a whole new slate of bill numbers. So everybody, please jot down the bill numbers that Melissa stated just now. I would drop it in the chat, but we don't have the opportunity to do that. So I'll follow up with you, Danielle, and make sure, and Curtis, that we can get that information out to everyone. But right now, when the bill goes up for, or when the bill comes back up again in January, it's essentially a blank slate. But we know that our current co-sponsors will most likely re-sponsor the bill. And so what we have been doing is doing events like these where we're talking within communities about this issue, especially as Melanie so eloquently stated, it is a racial justice issue as well as a decarceration issue. And so we're meeting within communities, we're talking with our legislators about why this is a necessary issue. We're connecting this to the fact that had Less is More New York been passed at the onset of the pandemic, we wouldn't have nearly as many people incarcerated. And we're tying it to the effective closure of one of the most notorious jail complexes in the entire country, which is Rikers Island. And so we have a number of action steps that we can take, and I'll share that in a second, but and I'll wrap up in a second. But for folks who are interested right now, even though we can't put it in the chat, I would absolutely ask you to check out our campaign website, which is lessismoreny.org. And there you can find our online action tools to get folks to take action and call, email, or tweet their elected official about this issue. And you'll be able to see a bit more information about the bill, some of which Melissa shared about the 4 provisions. And you can even find our fiscal impact fact sheet, which shows that when Less is More New York is passed, and I say when because you have to manifest everything in this life, when it's passed, it will save New York City, it'll save New York taxpayers $600 million annually. And that's only for reincarcerating people for technical parole violations. So we can effectively stop here and ask for questions, and we can, of course, provide more resources towards the end of the call.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. A lot of great information. Our committee has tackled, slightly this issue earlier in the year when COVID pandemic first hit our city. We did pass a resolution to have people who were incarcerated be released, and for technical violations. Obviously, there were a lot of people who were on Rikers Island during the early stages of the pandemic who were being held there for violations, and they shouldn't have been. So we did pass a resolution. So this effort is directly in line with the work we've done earlier, and I think is really important work that needs to be move forward in a positive way. So thank you for your presentation. We do have, thankfully, we have one of our local assembly people here to hear the presentation. I believe their office is here, as well as Senator Jackson's office is here. But I have a question before I turn it over to, hello, Assemblywoman. I have one question, and then I'll actually, let's hear from our electeds first. So I'll turn it over to you, Carmen.
Thank you, Curtis, and to the entire committee for this presentation and an informative meeting. I just want to speak up in support of the legislation that we just heard about, the Less is More campaign and what is happening. You know, last year, the state legislature passed some criminal justice reform in the bail and speedy trial area of the law. But there is still much to do when it comes to ensuring that the decarceration of Black and Brown New Yorkers is at the forefront of the fight for justice and equity in our state. In addition to this fight, there is also the fight for elder parole, which I carry in the state legislature, and the reform of the parole system in general. If many of you that have had experiences or are familiar with the system, it's a system that does not often give the opportunity for transformation or take into account the fact that people are able to transform their lives. And it's a system that is more punitive than restorative. And so there are a number of campaigns, including also a campaign that was launched this year that is called sorry, my puppy. Sorry, my husband's home and he is happy. The Price for Justice is the name of the campaign. And it talks also about the fees that are also being put on people who are incarcerated or on supervised parole and probation. And these fees are also a way of not only making the prison industrial complex about who has the money to have access to freedom and justice, but also it keeps people sort of in a cycle of re-entering and not re-entering our communities, but re-entering the prison system. And so I just wanted to come on here and reiterate my support. There have been some changes this year to the makeup of the state legislature. For the first time in a long time, our state Senate now has a supermajority, thanks to the work of Senator Jackson and many of his colleagues in that chamber. But also in the Assembly, you should know that the main sponsor of this legislation, unfortunately, has lost his election. So there should be some conversations happening about finding new folks to champion this issue. I'm happy to guide and help lead that conversation if my help is needed. And I just want to make sure that our community knows that although these issues sometimes feel detached from what we usually speak about in the Public Safety Committee, they are absolutely related, because what happens on the ground absolutely has a disproportionate effect on the bodies and the people that are incarcerated in this system across New York State. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm here to help answer questions or whatever is needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you nailed it. And one of my goals as the chairperson of this committee is to really bring these conversations to the forefront, because they are public safety committee issues and they do have a direct effect on the communities in which we all live. So thank you very much for acknowledging that. We have someone from Senator Jackson's office. Do you want to share anything? I believe Matthew Levy is on from Senator Jackson's office.
And before we move on, for one second, please. Thank you so much, Assemblymember De La Rosa. We really appreciate you being on and speaking to it. And I just wanted to highlight, you are correct in that our assembly sponsor is no longer in the legislature. And so we actively have a new bill sponsor, but we are waiting, to get that full confirmation, but we are moving full steam ahead. But thank you so much, and would welcome further conversations about this bill.
Okay, cool. So we're going to go to Matthew Levy, and then we'll get to the committee members. I see your hand, Gabriella, as well as Danielle.
Thank you very much, Curtis. And I'm delighted to be back as a former CB12 member, as a former member of this committee. I'm actually very thrilled to be here. And Assemblywoman, I know what you're experiencing. My dog is not barking right now, but I understand when she does in the middle of Zoom meetings. But when I'm the policy director for Senator Jackson, and when I first saw this bill, I immediately went to Senator and my Chief of Staff, Joanna Garcia, and discussed with them the merits of this bill. And they were thrilled about it for the same reasons that everyone who has presented on this bill did. I mean, the notion that we continually reincarcerate individuals for technical parole violation is absolutely ridiculous. Being 5 minutes late for curfew, maybe having a sip of an alcoholic beverage. This is ludicrous. And we continuously in this state incarcerate and reincarcerate Black and brown people at an overwhelmingly disproportionate rate. And I shouldn't have to say that. That should not be the reality in this state. It shouldn't be the reality in this country, but unfortunately it is. And the senator is proud to co-sponsor this legislation and push it and move it through the state Senate now that we'll have a supermajority next year. And when this bill comes up again, it's going to be a blank state. He will be co-sponsoring it again. That's how proud of it he is. And to talk about prison reform and carceral reform in this state, not only will this bill save $600 million, as stated before, but the bill to end solitary confinement, the HALT solitary bill, if we stop doing that as a form of punishment, we will save nearly $139 million as well. So we have to stop incarcerating people and start decarcerating our societies. That's what we have to do. And one of the things he's going to be doing is he's been sending a letter to our federal delegation, both Congress and Senate, saying we need to restore Pell Grants for incarcerated individuals so they can get an education in prison. There's no reason that they should not get educational opportunities like everyone else does. He's going to be sending a letter to docs asking them not to use an out-of-state institution to provide distance learning for New York State prisons. And he's going to, and one thing I know that we're going to discuss, what he'll try to do is probably find ways in the state budget to give in money for incarceration educational opportunities. And these are just some of the things that he's going to be doing next year. But he is a proud co-sponsor of this bill, and I'm really proud that he's my state senator. And I'll take any questions if anyone has them. And thank you, CB12.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being back with us, Matthew. So I was just made aware that we have one other representative from an elected official. So just to reiterate my statement, we're going to go to Natalie Espino from Gail Brewer's office, and then we're going to go to Danielle, followed by Gabriela on the committee, Sally, and then Domingo. We're going to go to our public, and then we have two public comments. Alex Duran, I moved you over to panelists. Welcome, Alex. And then we have Angela Fernandez as well. So hopefully you remembered your order, because I don't have that written down. But please take it away, Natalie.
Hello, CB12 Public Safety Committee. This is Natalie, Affairs Liaison in Heights, for the Manhattan Borough President, Gail Brewer, also former 12 member and a member of this. So happy to join you. I just wanted to thank you all for your work. I do not have a barking dog. I have a cat, which she can bring in to run around the house making noise. So I just wanted to say we have ongoing issues of noise and quality of life and the public safety response to that. We continue to look for solutions, try to advocate for folks. Their draft letter that with all of this together, I wanted to incorporate into it as well the recent resolution from public safety on some proposed measures hot rodding and all of it together. I wanted to thank you. So some of the hot rodding and the racing and some of this vehicular recreation that keeps people up at night and causes a traffic safety issue. We will also add about the 52nd precinct area where folks are gathering and that noise is coming in. Fantastic work on this legislation. To the group that is advocating, all our respect. If you have not represented at all of the other boards looking for support and need us to facilitate any of those communications, please let me know. I wish you all a great deal of safety. If I see you on the block without a mask, I'm going to call you out. Know that it comes from a place of love.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we're going to go to Danielle. Thank you very much, Natalie. I'm hearing a delay, so please charge it to my technology and not to Danielle.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Not sure if Carmen, Assemblywoman De La Rosa is still on the call. No, she's still here. Oh.
Yes, she is.
I'm just
Want to pose your question?
Yeah, I'm glad that she mentioned the fees associated with being incarcerated or on parole specifically. I think that that's not something that is common knowledge, that it's actually quite expensive for a person to be on parole. And so, yeah, I'm glad we mentioned that. And I was also wondering, I think last year it was, you mentioned trying to increase transportation from the city to the prisons upstate so as to make it easier for families visiting their loved ones. I'm just wondering if there are any updates on that legislation.
Yeah, we are going to be reintroducing it. Unfortunately, the bill hasn't passed, and neither has we haven't been able to get it funded in the budget. So we're going to continue that campaign with the Osborne Association. It will cost about $3 million, which is actually a drop in the bucket. DOCS's budget is about $3 billion. And so we've added some language to also include other areas in upstate New York to try to be more expansive of the legislation. And we're going to be reintroducing it in the coming weeks when session restarts. So, you know, I would love to see maybe if the committee would consider a resolution or something in support. I think that would be something that would be helpful to me, but, you know, I leave that to the committee.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. That's all that I have, Curtis.
You can email me that bill information. If you're Orlando, we can follow up and add it to our agenda in the future. Alrighty, so that Gabriela, you're up next.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. And to Melissa, you know, as a mother, my heart is with you. It's not easy. And thank you so much for sharing that. I would like to also comment that it's not only a racial disparity, it's also a gender disparity. Quite often, women's offenses are paid as a much higher rate than males. And I tell you for experience. And I would like to definitely get in touch with you on a personal note. I think we can, you know, we can do many things together. You can always, Curtis and Danielle, if you can please share also their information, I will appreciate it. And I think that yeah, quite often, and even though the topic right now is at the state level, state and city level, but we tend to forget that there's also federal prison. And the reality is not too far from city and state. So that's something that I would like that we also include in our conversation, because prison is not just on the state and the city level. There's also the federal prison, which unfortunately private companies are the ones that run it. What they call the commissary, where people and families has to spend a crazy amount of money to buy a bag of potato chips that in the street is 50 cents. In a federal prison will cost $5. So that's something that we can also think about. But definitely, thank you again for that presentation. I think it makes a lot of sense. One way or the other, we are really very connected with this issue. And Melissa, again, thank you very much for sharing this and stay strong. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, we're going to go to Sally. Sally, please unmute yourself.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for this important presentation. I would encourage everyone to go to the website. You can sign on there with your support. Also, thank you to Matt for bringing in the importance of the Pell Grant. We actually want to educate and rehabilitate people who are in prison, and education is the one way towards that. My question is for you, Curtis, and the committee. Is this the appropriate time to consider a resolution for support? Should we wait till January? How do we move this forward?
I definitely think now is the time, because they're going back into session January 6th. So if the committee is so moved to move forward with supporting this, someone would have to make a motion.
Can I make a
Allow
motion?
me to make the motion. Oh. Okay, second. It's okay.
Gabriela, being on the committee, you want to make a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. So there's a motion on the table for the Public Safety Committee for CB12 to move forward to draft a resolution in support of this legislation and helping to move it forward, and also raise awareness on our board. Are our committee members in favor? Please raise your hand. Okay, all in favor. Are there any other board members who are listening who would like to also vote? You can raise your hand at this time as well. I see all in favor. I think it's no one is opposing.
Even though I don't have my video
Maria Luna.
Okay, I see it. Maria, okay, that's a yes, Maria?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So we have everyone in support on supporting this important legislation moving forward. The issue of removing technical violations from the lives of those who are currently incarcerated and re-entering their communities. So we may have a few other questions. Thank you, Sally, for moving us forward in that regard. But are there any other questions? I know we had a few hands up. Domingo, hands up, Angela, and then Alex. Then after those three, we'll move forward. So Domingo, you're up next.
Yeah, I want to say, thank you for the invite. It's a very thorough and very informative presentation. Especially, one of my biggest concerns is also the watering down of legislation. Like we saw that with the bill reform and how it basically got watered down to irrelevancy. And I think it's very important to know, and that's why we have to do our due diligence. Everybody, as the chair of business development, I would also like to invite them to our committee to be able to discuss around the intersections of potentially being able to partner up with businesses so that formerly incarcerated individuals have also the opportunity to get a job. Part of breaking the cycle is also making sure that we provide access to jobs so that they don't get caught up in situations that arise out of need. So I think that's something that's extremely important, and count me in for that, to be able to host a conversation with different business owners around that. Another thing that I find extremely important, and I think Gabriela touched on it, is the fact of how poverty is exploited in these prisons. prisons, but also the work labor as well. So there's a lot of conversations that should be had, which is considered public safety, right? When we talk about public safety, we're talking about different layers within society, but I also think the rehabilitation process shouldn't be an exploitative process that's both exploiting the families and the incarcerated individuals. So I think that's extremely important to know. And thank you so much. It seems Danielle took the lead. Danielle, thank you. This is a pretty dope conversation, and I would love to connect to be able to make to make the connection and the intersectionality between the reentry and being able to see how we could partner up and create certain incubators or thought partners around the potential of providing jobs to individuals who are previously incarcerated.
Thank you very much, Domingo. Alrighty, Alex, you're up next.
Thank you, Curtis. I just want to put a final point on what Assemblywoman De La Rosa was saying in terms of the cost that this bill is going to save. I was born in this community, and Dominican American, and I love this community. But you know, in the 1980s and 1990s, especially, this community was systematically disinvested in. And all that money was put into building up prisons in the carceral state. I served 12 years in prison, and I'm actually still on parole. And even though I have a great job, I have 2 college degrees, your taxpayer dollars are going to supervising me. And, you know, it's really a waste of resources. Even though you know, I said I have a college degree, I have a great job and everything. I'm not unique in that regard. There are the majority of people who come home and serve their time, are doing the right thing, shouldn't be on parole. And all that money, that $600 million, should be going into building green spaces, public education, cleaning up the garbage in our communities. All the issues that were raised at the beginning of this call could be addressed if we put in resources and take it out from these systems of oppression. So I just wanted to highlight that. That's all. And thank you for having me. Thank you for all the beautiful faces.
Yo, Alex, you forgot that you're a great father too, my brother.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duran. Okay, so we're going to go to our last public comment is from Angela Fernandez.
Thank you so much, and I really want to, thank you, the organizers that came to speak. I know how much hard work it is to get a bill passed when you are doing it from the advocacy perspective, and I really want to especially thank Melissa for your personal story and your courage and your bravery during this time. I taught at Rikers Island. I taught in the women's facility, Rose M. Singer. I taught women's studies in Spanish. And it was just terrible, the conditions in which people, what they experience on Rikers Island. And I know that upstate, it's actually worse. And the question that I have is that I know that there's a growing industry around electronic monitoring devices. And the electronic monitoring devices, which are sold as a way to provide more freedom to individuals who are transitioning out, or as an instead of being incarcerated, turn out to be its own internal prison in their own home. The devices break down, and when they break down, they have a constant beeping noise every 15 minutes that go through the middle of the night, so people aren't able to sleep, which disrupts their ability to function the next day. They have to pay fees related to it. They're sold as reform, but they're just another form of oppression. So I'm just sharing this with you to ask because I'm not as familiar. So is it something that is also found in the parole population here in New York State? And also if this is something that you guys have seen, and if there's any thought to maybe do something with that in the future from a legislative perspective. And by the way, thank you for who spoke up about the private prison industry complex. because there are private companies making money off of these electronic devices.
Thank you, Angela, for the question. This is Kenyatta. So electronic monitoring, or ELMO, just as how I'm used to calling it, is a really big issue. And I think you pointed out that we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're not just replacing one form of incarceration for another, and we're not just repeating the same old things that we've done previously. We have not done the research into electronic monitoring as it relates to parole reform, because this bill specifically is looking at technical parole violations. But I think that is something that we should definitely welcome in the future, Angela, because of everything that you just highlighted. And across the country, we've seen an increase in I can also speak from like experiences at like I've had in other spaces where I've been in states where they've reduced the prison population, but then increased the number of people who are on ELMO or electronic monitoring. And so that is something that organizationally we're paying attention to, and we're being mindful of that. So again, not a clear answer in terms of like, are we moving on it for Less is More New York? But that is something that we should talk further, and we can talk with some of the members of our coalition who are not here just because it's just Katal presenting, but we can talk with some other members of our coalition and see if they have any data that we can get to you on this.
Well, I'd love to work with you as well, because I was the former commissioner for the New York State Division of Human Rights. I interacted with the commissioner of the Department of Corrections, and there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done. So thank you.
Absolutely. And just to put a plug, and we'll follow it up in the notes, but if anyone listening in on this call is interested in learning more about Less is More New York, we are actually going to have a campaign update call on Wednesday, December 16th at 2:30 p.m. And so you can find more information about that on our Less is More New York website. Again, lessismorenewyork.org. And we're encouraging folks to take the contact your lawmaker action. And so you can reach out to your elected official, and you'll most likely get a call from Melanie or myself just talking with you about ways we can continue to amplify our bill. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy we had this conversation. This has been very fruitful this evening. Like Angela, my organization also works with young people who are involved in the justice system. We've worked on Rikers Island. We've worked with young people in probation. And I have a brother who's been incarcerated for 10 years, have not seen, who's been released in April of next year. And I have another brother who is on parole and currently fighting a parole violation. So this is an issue that's very near to me as a man of color and as a family issue. My mother has to fight, to send money to him. I send money to him, and it's really, really expensive. And people don't realize how taxing it is for family to support their relatives who are being abused in the system by having to pay for meals themselves. My brother needed money to buy Thanksgiving's food. It's a special day for them. They have to pay for a special meal in this facility, which was insane for me. But thank you all very much. This is a much needed conversation to be had. So thank you. And thank you for allowing me to share my personal attributes as well. So we are going to move in. We'll connect everyone offline. I know Gabriella wants to be connected. Angela will also connect with you as well offline, and hopefully be in at the next meeting that you all have to support your efforts moving forward. Danielle and I will take Danielle, thank you for making this meeting happen, because you were the person who brought this agenda item up, and so thank you for taking the lead. You and I can work together on adopting the language in the legislation to present at our general body meeting in December. Hopefully you all can come, and if you're listening, you can make a public statement in support to encourage our general board members to also support this effort. Danielle.
No, I was just going to say one thing, since you shared your personal experiences and other folks have also shared their personal experiences. And thank you for all of that and for this amazing conversation. So I'll just say that in my personal work, I work on Rikers Island with folks who are elderly and aging in the jail system. And it's quite sad to see so many people who are 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. Some of them are being incarcerated for the first time, but many of them are constantly cycling in and out because of parole and technical violations, and some of them are sentenced to more time than they'll probably end up having on this earth, which is quite sad. So yeah, I just wanted to share that as well. And thank you for everything that you said.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, so we have just two very brief agenda items. Last month we talked about the issue, public safety issue pertaining to fire hydrants and the lack of parking in our community as a byproduct fire hydrants and the confusion surrounding I guess the lack of painting on the sidewalks and fire hydrant areas. So people are getting more parking tickets because there isn't any the painting is missing from the sidewalks for the most part. And there's also the concern of which fire hydrants in our community are operable. You know, we talked about that maybe there should be an effort to have some that are no longer in use to be removed to allow for parking spaces to be accessed in our community. So I wanted to bring up that conversation because our assistant chair also brought this issue up last month and shared data points pertaining to the number of parking tickets we've seen as a byproduct of the hydrant issue. This is not an issue, or the issue is not us advocating against fire hydrants. The issue is us requesting that there is an assessment done by the FDNY to determine how many are operable in our communities, and to demand or ask that the FDNY paint the curves where there are fire hydrants, so we know and drivers know that they can park in these areas, and they're able to, you know, no one walks around with a ruler to measure how much the distance between their hydrant and their car. So it's just another way to penalize and to tax, you know, our neighbors who own cars during this very already challenging time. So we wanted to bring this conversation back up. You know, after speaking with Danielle, there was some data that was shared. It's a lot of data to move forward. I think the next best step, I was hoping that the fire department would be here this evening to answer questions, but I think the best next step is to pass a resolution urging the fire department to, one, give us to do an assessment on the current number of fire hydrants that are in operation and inoperable in our community. We should know those numbers, and we should also know if there's a plan to paint the curves where the fire hydrants currently are located in order to prevent people from getting unnecessary tickets for parking in areas they have no idea what the distance are between the hydrant and their cars. Did I summarize that okay, Danielle?
Yeah, no, that was perfect. And just for anybody that wasn't on the call last time, this came up, this was born out of an issue that we're having in this community with parking and people being heavily ticketed. And Idanis Rodriguez actually mentioned a bill that he had to try to cancel out any tickets that were given to people during COVID, because it exacerbates their, it puts additional financial pressure on people who are already feeling the pressure due to COVID. So one thing that we talked about as a potential solution was trying to address parking in fire hydrant zones because they're not demarcated. And I sent out this data set today. My apologies if it was overwhelming. I guess the takeaway from the data set is that there are a number of people who are being ticketed for parking, you know, 8, 11 feet too close to the hydrant. And like Curtis said, people aren't walking around with measuring sticks. And so, yeah, I think, and we weren't able to hear from the FDNY about their thoughts, but yeah, I would be in favor of a resolution.
Yep. And I think the conversation is not just necessarily a, you know, it's not exclusively related. It's not just because of the parking issue. We're responding to the need to know which fire hydrants are working in the community, which are not working, and to ensure that they're marked in the streets. So I see a few hands raised. I did lower a few hands as well. So if I lowered your hand by mistake, please re-raise it and I'll acknowledge you if you're from the public. So we'll start with the committee. We'll start with Osi and then go to Mariela.
Okay, so thanks. My understanding is that the one that are not operational, they actually put a ring, they actually screw a ring to it. So, and I think it's in red or something, and it's an indication that the fire hydrant is not in operation, but I'm not sure if there are any, I mean, like if they're doing it all of them, but I saw it in few places. But then again, the other thing is that I think people they're actually really stepping out. I saw many people stepping out of their car and just like, you know, they step by step to count like 15 feet from the fire hydrant. I'm not saying it's the best thing, and maybe painting, like you said, is a better one, but it's just another way of making sure that you're really,
I've seen people do the whole stepping thing too as well, but like you said, it doesn't work. It's not accurate, and people are still getting ticketed. I guess my question is, so if they do have this, if there is some system in place to indicate that they're no longer in operation, then why can't they be removed to be parking spaces? Are they temporarily inoperable, or do you know anything about that, OC?
Well, no, I think that what happened is that in order to remove a fire hydrant, you probably need like a whole DDC and a contractor to remove it. Because right. But I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Well, I guess remove is too strong of a word, but allow it to be used for a parking space by putting a sign there to say that it's a parking space. Once again, I don't want to get too much into the traffic and transportation issue aspect of this, but I do think that if we look at it from a public safety, we need to know which fire hydrants work. We need to know, what the distance are between the cars and the fire hydrant. That's the public safety element of it. Okay, so Mariela.
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting issue, and Danielle, thanks for sending out that data. And I had some trouble looking at it because I saw the column that was about distance from the curb, but the vast majority of them were 0 feet. So I'm not sure if that's distance perpendicular, parallel to the curb versus distance from the hydrant. I didn't get the feeling that that was distance from the hydrant, since I think of the 18,000, I think the vast majority of them said 0. So that's just one thing. But I think that we would be getting ahead of ourselves to draft a resolution asking for this if we have not yet had anyone from the fire department come to a meeting. I think that unless there is a really pressing need to know this month which hydrants are working, I think it would be really great I think it could help bring the fire department better into the fold of public safety, to just say we really need you to help us understand this issue, rather than kind of bypassing them. So I would say, if we can wait, and I'd be happy to help with any kind of outreach to the fire department.
Okay. Perfect. That's how you have a job, Mariela. You are the person in charge of getting the FDNY to attend the January meeting.
Got it.
I'm all about delegation here. All right, so maybe we can chat offline, you, Danielle, and I, to come up with a strategy, and we can draft up a short statement as to why we need them to come, and maybe highlight the issues that we've heard and discuss, and then we can send along and have them schedule time to come next month. So does that sound like a good plan for the committee members? Do you think we should just do that? All right, perfect. Danielle, are you in support of that? All right, perfect. So we have an agenda item for January. We can move forward to our last agenda item, which is thinking about our priorities for 2021. This was a very busy year for us. We passed a lot of great resolutions. We passed one during, the whole records issued during the peak of COVID. We had a public hearing on bail reform. We tackled, a lot of issues during this year. So thank you all for being great committee members and bringing these issues to the forefront. So we have to start thinking about the future and what we want on our agenda for next year. One of the big priorities in one of the conversations that Danielle, our assistant chair, and I have had several times is having a public hearing on what does reimagining public service, public safety mean as a community, and maybe inviting a few panelists to be on at that meeting and have it sometime the early part of next year, perhaps in January. So that's the only thing that's on that I think that I have been in my mind for tackling for the next go around. I think a lot could come from that, but I wanted to open up the conversation to see if you all had any priorities or any particular things you think we need to tackle. We're going to talk about fireworks. That's going to come up next month in January as well. So there's a fireworks mitigation plan that has to come out before we get to the summer months of next year. But other than those two items, what are we missing? What needs to be discussed? I know, OC, you wanted to have some follow-up on the animal abuse situation uptown. We didn't get any you were not on the call early part of the meeting, but we can, have maybe a presentation or a discussion on that topic if you feel that's important. I really want you all to be actively engaged in the committee setting, so it's not just, Danielle and I thinking about what we want to talk about for each month. So I'll open the floor up for comments from you all. Sally? Sally Fisher, I see your hand up.
Yes, my hot button issue, the decriminalization of people with mental illness, looking at the pilot program that has been proposed and what the limitations are in terms of what the city has proposed versus what advocates for people with mental illness have proposed in terms of having crisis intervention teams be the first responders instead of the police and separating it from the 911 system. So I think there could be a good discussion about that.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I have that listed down. Are there any other topics? Dare I say, what do we think about the decriminalization of marijuana? I didn't want your personal opinion. I said, what do you think about that as an agenda item?
Yes, please.
Okay. I think that'd be a good topic, right? I mean, it's good. It could possibly come up in the next legislative session. And I think it obviously connects directly to criminalization and incarceration and wrongfully. And there's also this element, as Domingo, I'm not sure if Domingo is still on, but access to, there's going to be all this conversation about permits, who gets access to opening up distribution centers. This conversation is coming, and I think we need to be ahead of the curve, talking about that at the public safety level, as well as how do we make sure that how do you make sure communities of color who have been wrongfully impacted by this issue are at the forefront of getting permits to distribute, sell, and make money? So I think I would love to add that to the list. And maybe Domingo, if you're on, we can partner together on that public hearing or conversation.
Correct. Agreed. Because there's already moves being made where, you know how it is, certain individuals are selected to be just the face and not necessarily prioritizing like Black and brown people who have been historically disproportionately arrested for these type of what used to be considered a criminal act. But I think one thing that we could definitely discuss that. One thing I would say, Curtis, I used to be in this committee, but I think it's prudent, being that you also passed a resolution. I think the importance of defunding the police and maintaining those conversations around what does that mean and conversations around reimagining public safety is as crucial as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I think we discussed having a public hearing in January to tackle the overall conversation of what it means to reimagine public safety and bringing in some community activists to be on that panel. So it's a conversation that's not led by us, but it's actually led by experts who are in the field every day helping to reimagine. So I think that's on our agenda first. I think we have that first hearing to tackle that topic, and I think so many things will come out of that would help us tackle issues like marijuana and decriminalization of mental illness as well. So are there any other topics you want to throw out there, Mariela?
Yeah, I was thinking when I think about public safety, especially coming out of COVID, or we're still in COVID, I also think talking about what we do to engage young people and youth during this time, and what does that look like. When you bring up the decriminalization of marijuana, I also think about what does that mean for young people and what does that mean for high school students. And so I think that there's an opportunity for like a more robust conversation that maybe also means collaborating with youth and education or some other committee. But I think that when I maybe it's my background, but when I think about public safety and I think about the decriminalization of marijuana, I also do think about what does that mean for young people and high school students and younger in particular.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly.
I would just add to that, and I would say the school to prison pipeline and how there are so many folks that enter the system at very young ages and then end up cycling in and out for their entire lives. They might do some time, and then, as I mentioned before, I work with the elderly population. We have many folks that enter the system at young ages, do a lot of time, and then end up being reincarcerated and then stuck on parole. So I think sort of having that be, maybe that's needs to be just own unique conversation, just school to prison pipeline, and then, you know,
Yeah.
how that relates to parole and in prison and elder parole actually too, because that's something that we haven't really talked specifically about. And perhaps having RAP, the organization RAP, coming to speak about that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's a great idea, and maybe that's even something we can, you know, as we partner or think about the marijuana decriminalization conversation with the business committee, looking at it as a business and safety issue. Maybe we can look at we can partner with the education committee and work with Faye on the school to prison pipeline, and maybe get some nonprofit organizations to come in and talk about that particular issue as well. So I think we have 4 good ideas. We have decriminalization of mental illness, marijuana decriminalization, reimagining public safety as a public hearing first of all, and then the school to.
We lost you, Curtis.
Curtis, we can't hear you. No.
We've lost our chair. Curtis.
It is 8:53.
Oh, we hear you now. We hear you, Curtis.
Oh, was I muted? I said so much.
No, you were, we heard you, but your connection like went out for a sec. You want to just repeat?
I was saying that we have 4 really good issues I think we can focus on moving into the new year, and partner with the business committee, maybe even youth and education. So we'll tackle those issues, starting off with the reimagining public safety. Danielle and I will start working on that as a public hearing for January. Maybe we can do that at our meeting, or who knows. We'll shoot around some possibilities to you all via email. And I think that's all we have on our agenda today, unless there are any items you all want to pose for new business.
I just want to add something to that list, if I can. I think we should talk about gun violence and gun trafficking.
Yes.
Do you have the animal abuse on that list, or that's a subtopic?
I think we can put it.
If you think.
And Curtis?
Who said subtopic? Who said it's a subtopic?
I don't know.
On the subject of gun violence, can we also make sure to have folks talk about the gun program?
Buyback?
Yeah, because last time I brought it up, and I forget which precinct it was, but they said that they were not participating. So I think if we're going to talk about gun violence, it'd be really great to also make sure that folks know where they can return guns.
Mm-hmm. And there actually was an email sent out by the NYPD One Police Plaza today. There's another program, but it's in Queens, another buyback program at a precinct in Queens. So it'll be great to have one uptown. Thankfully, we haven't had a lot of issues with shootings as some of the other areas. I mean, we've had shootings, but not as many as some of the other areas. So I think that may be one of the reasons they have not had a drop-off site for Uptown Manhattan. But Graham, I do hear you. I do think that there is a conversation that needs to be had, a presentation needs to be made on the issue of gun trafficking, as well as you said drugs.
No, I said gun trafficking. Really, it's
gun. Okay.
That's yeah, it's a big.
Got it.
And Curtis, if you could include health and environment in the mix in terms of talking about mental illness, and also actually decriminalization of marijuana, because there are some public health implications.
Yep, perfect. Alrighty, so it is now 8:55. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Hey, sorry, Curtis, are you able to share the presenters' information? I think some people wanted to know how to contact them, or the presenters. Can you say your contact information out loud?
Yes.
Yeah. So my email is mdominguez, like my last name on the thing right there, at catalcenter.org.
That's too much.
We can email it. We'll email it around to the committee members after the call. It'll also be reflected in the meeting minutes at our general body meeting as well. And if you're really urgent, you can go to the CB12 YouTube page and follow and subscribe to us, and you will see the live recording of this conversation there, and you can listen to their presentation all over again, as well as jot down the email addresses. Cool. All righty. Well, thank you all for a very productive meeting. We look forward to bringing the resolution to a full vote in later this month. Take care. Have a great night. All righty. Bye.
Lisa, stay strong. Alex, stay strong.
Thank you